All right, I've been planning to make this video for a long time, finally getting to it. I want you to know about another critically important book. This one by Adolf Köberle, The Quest for Holiness. It's an older book. It was written in the 20th century. It's been reprinted several times. Whiffen Stock now is offering a reprint of it, and that's Adolf Köberle. You can see his name here, K with an umlaut over the O, B-E-R-L-E, Adolf Köberle. And Köberle's book is significant because it does a great job of laying down the basic issue of people trying to win their way to God's favor over against God's absolute work in doing everything. And really what he does as he progresses in the book is he spends a great deal of time pushing hard on the idea of complete divine monergism, that God does all the work of salvation. And then he couples that with the other side, which is absolute human accountability, that people are held accountable for what they do or don't do. And he holds both of those together throughout justification and sanctification. In fact, that's the German title, Justification and Sanctification. It became Quest for Holiness when it came into English. So what Köberle does, though, in this long book is he starts by making a really brilliant observation. And it's a little bit tough sledding the first, frankly, 40 pages, kind of a tough go, but have at it. And I'm going to get you started by walking you through the first 17 pages or so to kind of give you the insight of what he's up to. He's suggesting that essentially every religion in the world works as an effort for man to try to attain God's favor or to attain God's goodness or to get up to where he needs to be, where God is. As Köberle puts it, is a pursuit of holiness worthy of God. And Köberle's insight is that humans have used throughout history essentially three avenues for this pursuit. And these track beautifully to an understanding of anthropology and also, as we'll see, to an understanding of the transcendentals. And this is really, I think, profoundly insightful on Köberle's part, and I found this to be really helpful as a paradigm, just thinking through how religions work and how different avenues manifest themselves in different ways in different religions, and yet there's commonalities in all of them, and even how Christianity can be messed up and turned into one of these pursuits upward to gain holiness with God. So, what are the three tracks that Köberle understands? Well, he says it tracks to three critical aspects of the human being. The human being, he says, is basically consists of his will and his soul and then his mind. And so these are the three breakdowns that Köberle gives for how a human operates. A human being, he says, is will. In other words, choices, doing things, accomplishing things. And that's the bigger point here. The willing is the doing part of stuff. Soul is getting in more to the feelings about things. And then mind, of course, is getting into the thinking about things. And so what Köberle is saying is that humans basically function their whole lives in these three areas. Things we do, things we feel, things we think. Yeah, that kind of checks out. And in fact, this checks out with the ancient Greek idea of the human being having these three key things, the idea of his ethos, what he does, and his pathos, what he feels, and then the logos, or the word, the truth, the mind. And sometimes you might get other words thrown in here for this, but the idea is this: it's the thought process, the ethos, pathos, logos, the key parts of how things operate. Now, what Köberle's insight is that these three kind of critical tracks of what makes a human translate into three suggested ways for a person to be able to gain holiness with God. These different avenues or paths that people might take. And these translate into the way of moralism, or mysticism, or he calls it speculation, but I'm going to call it rationalism, because I think it's a better parallel, and I think it actually gets at the issue even more thoroughly. The problem of rationalism, our thinking. So these are these three tracks that people will offer as ways to get right with God. So how does this work out? Well, let's start with will, doing, ethos, moralism. This is standard in so many religions, and some religions really key on this more than others. Islam is really about what you do. You know, keeping the pillars of Islam, praying when you need to pray, obeying the commandments, being submissive. That's what Islam means, to be in submission. And so the idea of you need to do the right things. And so by doing enough things, getting better at it, better and better and better, you will achieve the standard of the right doing and be holy, and God will find you acceptable then. And so by working hard at doing the right things, you can earn your way to heaven. This is the most obvious one we recognize as, oh, that's classic works righteousness. That's messed up. But then we have the second track, the idea of the pathos, the mysticism, the soul. And this is where you have people who are thinking, no, what I need to do is not work my way by good works, but I need to have a mystical bond with God. I need to rise above the mundane things of this life, the things that are so sordid and so material and earthly, and rise to a pure, mystical sense with God. And you'll have the mystics who are really into this. Hinduism kind of keys this way. Actually, it follows all three tracks, but we think of it often this way. Meditation, meditative sorts of things, you know, the release of yourself from this world and capturing oneness with God in sort of a mystical union where your holiness is achieved through the purity of your reflections and the purity of your meditation and your spirit being lifted up to where God is. Very Eastern way of thinking. Then the third one, mind, we think, oh, that's the safe way. So it's not a matter of your works and it's not a matter of these feelings. It's a matter of right thinking about stuff. And so here we have, if you learn the right things and if you gain the right knowledge, you gain the right insights, you can gain access to God through your right learning, through your right command of situations. And so through using our thinking and our mind and dwelling on the right ideas, we can gain an understanding of how God truly is and gain purity and holiness worthy of God. All three of these are very different, but all three of these tracks we see present in religion. And in fact, Köberle's insight, I think this is exactly right, is every religion basically has elements of all three at work in them. Let's think about Hinduism. It actually offers three tracks: the way of doing things the right way, the way of encountering God through the mystical union, or the way of your right learning. And even Christianity has elements of this. Think about this. How many Christian groups are really into doing the right thing, the moralism, the achieving the right actions? Sometimes we accuse Rome of this, but really Rome has all three of these and present, as all of Christianity does. But you get some of the denominations that are working hard, you know, your prayer time, and you're doing the right things, and your service, and you're going to the soup kitchen and helping out and giving of yourself fully. So you work your way, and it's all about getting your actions right and keeping the commandments and doing the commandments and doing. Then you have other tracks of Christianity which are much more about the mystical. So you might put over here the doing stuff, maybe thinking like Nazarenes or some of the really Protestant, heavy into the works kind of stuff. Got to do the right things, live the right way, dress the right way, act the right way. So you get into all the moralism. Mysticism is also present in Christianity. This is all about Pentecostalism and the neo-Pentecostal kind of stuff, and all about the feeling of God and losing yourself, and you have the glossolalia as the evidence and all the proof of, I have my mystical ascent to God and now I'm one with God. So mysticism present. Further back in the Roman kinds of things, Teresa of Avila, these others who lose themselves up in their connection with God. Long track record of this within Christianity. And rationalism, you bet. This is the scholasticism, the right learning, get everything lined up, peg, every dot on every I, every T crossed exactly right, have every doctrine perfectly in place. If we get it all right, are thinking the right things, learning the right things, now we're going to be good enough for God. Now, every branch within Christianity kind of tends towards one of the others of this. Pentecostals, Nazarenes, or the Holiness groups, Lutheranism. In fact, my branch of Lutheranism owns the third category of working our way through our right thinking. Now, none of us says, no, we're not working our way to God. We can't do that. God has to come to us, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But the point is to recognize how each of these are present, and it's also interesting is how each of these actually tracks to one of the three transcendentals. The transcendental of goodness that is simply at work in the world. There is goodness. Will gets into that goodness thing. Soul, that's into the beauty aspect, that we are to be pursuing what is beautiful and the beauty as at work. And then we have, of course, truth as the third transcendental, which maps beautifully here. What I want you to recognize is how this paradigm, this threefold paradigm of these three ways, just is at work in so many areas in reality in our human being and in the world around us, and it keeps us showing up again and again and again. Köberle's insight is that every one of these becomes an avenue or a track that different people within different religions will attempt to use to try to be good enough for God. And the temptation is that all of us lean towards this effort of picking one of these three or different combinations. Köberle talks about that. You'll have combinations of various forms. One doesn't like this at all, but kind of these two it kind of combines. If you start paying attention, you see this showing up in all kinds of literature, even among Christians. The common problem that Köberle gets at in his book, and this is his beautiful, profound insight, is that every one of these is representing an upward climb. Up we go to God. Up we go. Man's going to do it, either through his working or through his mystical union or through his careful learning and his thinking. Up he goes. Better, 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 holier, making progress, getting there. We're going to do it. We're going to climb up to God. And Köberle's insight is, no, 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 no. Every one of these thwarts divine monergism, because the whole point of Christianity is that God comes to us in Jesus Christ, and He comes to us where we are with His grace. We don't climb up to Him. He comes down to us. This is the profound insight of Lutheran teaching that Luther gets so spot on. We don't ascend to God. God descends to us in Christ, comes to us where we are in our utter inability, and heals us and makes us whole and brings us, still sinners, into God's presence because of His grace given to us. That's the real power of Christianity. Not what God is even working in me per se, but what God says about me and what He gives me in Christ. So the power of Christianity is not one more method to try to climb to God, or a better method because it's combining all three, or it's more intellectual and it's not so about feelings. The feeling, mind, doing thing misses the point entirely. Pick your poison, whether you're doing it through your careful thinking or your great feelings and your mystical experience, or you're doing it through your hard work and effort. Every one of those three boils down to the same thing. You're doing it. And it's all about human activity and human accomplishment. Christianity negates all of that. We never climb up to God. God must come to us. So it's helpful to recognize the propensity of each of these three areas, even in our lives as Christians. We're all prone this way. And sometimes we get busy trying to diss the works righteous or the mystical people and elevating the careful thinking, but it all boils down to the same thing. We're trying to do something instead of letting God simply give to us. So that should get you started on Köberle. Take a crack at it. It's worth reading. And even if you don't read it, delight in knowing that you never have to find the right path to God. He finds the path to you in Christ. He comes to you, and He gives you all you need just as you are. That's the core of how Christianity is. That's what makes everything click for us, and that's what we delight in as we celebrate Christ coming to us, giving us God's grace, and giving us all that we need. We don't do it. God does it all.